reason that the stars align. But I know I've told you about 1,000 times. Only a woman like you could love a man like me. See the light in my dark, sail a ship on my sea. But when it's all said and done, I'll still believe only a woman like you could love a man like me. Could take the good with the bad, all the happy and sad. Girl, you stand by my side when I'm wrong, when I'm right. Only a woman like you. Love a man like me. See the light in my dark, sail a ship on my sea.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our next Pig Channel webinar here. This webinar is presented by Demeter Veterinary Services. I am Dr. Ryan Tenbergen. I'm a veterinarian in Ontario for Demeter. We hope we've put together a great agenda for you today and can bring you lots of good points to take back to your farms. Just a few housekeeping things before we start going here. First, I want to thank the featured sponsor of this webinar. That is SearVet Canada. And then also I invite you during the webinar, if you have any questions, there is a chat button or box just right at the bottom of your screen there. So you can type any questions in there. And then at the end of the presentations, we will go through those questions, and anything not answered in the time that we have, we'll make sure we get some answers out to everyone so everyone can get the answers they need. So with that, I am actually going to speak first on this webinar. So I'm going to start with something that's always been popular at a lot of the meetings that we've done. So we've always called it a "What's Up, Doc" section, and really it's kind of the short of some really kind of new, innovative things or hot topics. So I've picked a few here to share with you all. And the first one being the Iris app. So this is something that was developed by the Canadian Veterinary Group, and this is an app that is for real-time inventory and mortality tracking on your farm. So how this app works is there's a desktop version of that, and then also the version that you can see on your phone. So I've just put some pictures there as far as what they look like. And on the desktop version, that's where most of, I guess, the arranging and creating of groups and everything like that happens. So on that, there's a group administrator. So they're basically the lead for the given production system. So they're able to create users and farms, and then they're able to add farm administrators. So those are the people that are at the farms every day, dealing with the, shipping pigs or receiving pigs, or if there's any mortalities, being able to pull those out. So those, farm administrators, they can be assigned to multiple farms, and they're the ones inputting the data. And then what it also displays is all your batches, so your open batches, so current inventory, mortality, and those. And then also you can export all that data to Excel, where you have both open batches and all your closed batches as well. And on the phone, it's very similar. It's just a little bit more limited as far as like administrative tasks on that. So you can see open and closed batches on that. So both inventory and mortality. And then on the app, that's where most of the input was designed to be. So you're able to create and close batches. You can enter pigs, exit pigs, and then add your mortality as well, and the reasons for those mortalities. That's not a necessary thing. You can just put number, but we have put a reason. a reason checklist as well. And these are just some screenshots of some other things on the app. So this first one here, basically this is where you're able to pick the different batches. So you have all your batches listed there where you log in, then you click on one and it'll give you information for that. This is an example of a screen for adding new pigs into a barn. So it's pretty simple. We wanted to design it so that it's really, really simple. So it's simply a date and number of pigs. You can put comments or not. Some people like to put source of pig or, disease status or whether it's a certain vaccine or another. So you have the comment section there to be able to track that. And then that's just a summary screen of the batch on the far right there. So you can see here, there's, 500 pigs in, they took 10 out and they added 2 mortality. So that's what it looks like. And then as you add more actions for that batch, it just continues to add on to the bottom there. And then these are some of the outputs from the desktop version. So again, if on the left there, this picture, that's just if you clicked on a batch on that desktop version, that's what it would show. So basically the date, the reason for the death, the number, and then any comments that were made there. And then on the right, that's what the data looks like in Excel for the export. And that's where it becomes really interesting, because when you export that data, you can really do a whole lot of things with that. And the mortality alerts, that's something that's very, very new. So it's kind of, I guess, hot off the press, just active in the last couple of days, actually. We've created it so that if a mortality exceeds a certain threshold that's been set, then it's going to alert the user. So it'll alert the farm admins as well as the group admins. So this is just some examples saying, the total mortality has exceeded what it should. And that's kind of the flag to say, okay, we need to go check on this barn and maybe make an action. Same thing here on the cell phone. That's how those alert look. So it's both on the desktop and the cell phone. And this is really a continuous process to develop this and improve it. And we want input. We've had small practice groups, and they've been able to really help us kind of guide us in how we're going to develop it. So really, we want to build on this based on those requests. So, in August, we had focus group call, and there was 16 work items, right? So that ranged from a lot of like big tasks, like the mortality alerts. That was a big task to get done. And then there's really small things such as filtering tools and things like that, just to make the usability of the program a little bit better. And then there's also just a continuous wish list for it as well that we want to continue to improve. So things like CPE treatment records, feed delivery tracking, like complete closeout reports. Like we really want to continue to build on this based on what we hear from the requests of all the producers like yourself. So talk to your vet about that if you have any suggestions or if you want to try it out. And yeah, it's a pretty exciting thing. I don't think there's anything like it. So we're all very excited to be able to offer that. And then just quickly, this is the second new innovation, I guess. So Myosphere PCV ID. So this is a Mycoplasma circovirus vaccine. It's very, very unique in the fact that it's the first intradermal vaccine introduced in Canada. So when I say intradermal, it's not into the muscle. So right now, most of our injections, I guess, would be intramuscular. So that's with a needle. So this is a needleless device. It's called the hypodermic. This is provided with the vaccine. And really, I mean, there's food safety benefits of that. It's a really, really small dose as well. So yeah, there's just some points here as well. So no trigger. It's a really easy tool to use. You essentially just put pressure against the pig and then it's injected needleless. It's really, really light. Yeah, there's a RFID chip on the bottle, so it's able to track both vaccinations for the day as well as how many doses are left in the bottle. So a lot of that is displayed on an LCD display there. And again, when I say intradermal, so not in the muscle. So if you look at that red layer on the right, that would be the muscle. So intradermally, just below the skin, before the fat. So this is where there's a lot of immune cells that research has shown that potentially the response is better in this space. So again, first one licensed in Canada. It's been in Europe for a little while, but it has never come across the ocean here. And again, I guess this is kind of similar to what I've already explained to you as well. So, you know, the chip on the bottle, precise dosing with that automatic syringe, and then total traceability too. So you're able to, there's an app for it, we're able to track, again, daily vaccinations and everything like that. So really trying to, you know, take it to use technology and be able to track these sort of things. So it's a really cool tool. And we have some across our clinics, we have some like demos to try and things like that, but it is available now. So that's a new exciting thing. The last thing I wanted to talk about was a trial done with a new product. So Maperlin. This is a product that can be used to increase breeding performance in a sow herd. And what this is, it is the molecule is piforelin. So basically, it's a synthetic hormone, and it stimulates estrus. So when we talk about estrus and ovulation, so there's follicle stimulating hormone (FSH) and then luteinizing hormone (LH). So those are displayed in the bottom here. And what this does is it induces an increase in FSH. So that's the follicle stimulating hormone. And that creates the natural maturation of those eggs in the ovaries of the sow. And then, but it does not cause ovulation, right? So that's the difference of some other products where they will also cause ovulation. This just causes that the maturation of those eggs. And how it's used is 24 hours after weaning. It's a 0.5 cc dose to gilts and 2 cc dose to sows. So you give it 24 hours after weaning, and then you continue with your normal heat checking and breeding after that when they're seen in estrus. There's many potential benefits with this. You know, research as far as in like if you do a literature search, you know, it'll show that there's improved number of sows showing estrus after weaning with this product, improved sows bred by 7 days after weaning. That's another potential benefit from that. And a few farms that I've been involved with, they've been trying that. And that's definitely one thing I can say that the comments have been that there does seem to be more sows that show heat after weaning. Some other things, improved conception, improved total born, and birth weight would be another thing that has been shown to increase with it as well. So many potential benefits. We wanted to show a trial that was performed within our group. So this was done last year in 2020. So what they did is they used this product and they tracked both the wean to breed service interval and then total born and fairing rate. And when you look at this, there's really nothing significant in the data between the two groups. You know, total born increased numerically. So you have here in the control group 15.78 versus 16.05 in the test group, but that number wasn't statistically significant, which we look at that p-value. But the interesting thing about that is when you split that out by parity, you do start to get some more difference. So, you know, if you look at specific subgroups, so P1, P2, you can see an increase of 0.48 total born, and then P5 plus, you can see a difference of up to 0.87 total born. So that became more interesting with that. So what happened was there was a second trial just completed this year, actually. And what was seen in that trial, and again, high number of sows, so 550 essentially in both groups, and there was an increase of 0.43 total born in the Maperlin group. And again, that was targeting that specific parity group, so P1, P2, and P5 plus. So you're not doing those middle parities with it because they're shown to be no benefit. And when you look at the return on investment of this, you know, at 350 per dose, if you look at 0.43 pigs total born times, you know, $40 a pig as an average value, you look at a return on investment of almost 5 to 1. So it's an interesting product. We're starting to use it a little bit. If you have any questions, again, you should talk to your vet. And yeah, you can potentially explore this. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. And I'd also, I would just like to introduce our next speaker as I am presenting and moderator today. Sorry, just one sec. So our next speaker is Steve McFeeney. So he's been working in the swine industry for over 20 years here in Ontario. He first started with some farms with the premium pork system here, and then went with the farms with Sunterra, overlooking all areas of production. So based on his experience, he's, you know, we're very excited to have him as part of the Demeter team. And he works here essentially supporting producers in any way and monitoring the health of the different production systems here. And then in a joint presentation, Marsha Chambers will also speak with him. So again, she's one that's been in the swine industry for over 20 years. Again, we're very fortunate to have a great team like this. She's done everything from training new employees to managing multiple farms. She really helps a lot of producers with troubleshooting, staffing, and working on the temporary foreign worker file right now. That's really been a big help to all of our customer base. So with that, I will pass it over to Steve.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Steve. Ryan just introduced me. We're just going to go over some of the best practices in the first week of nursery. Some of the common things that are missed and overlooked. Just hang on one second. The key points on entry is what to look for and what to focus on, the barn cleanliness and biosecurity, the temperature, high quality of water, the feed, the piglet care, stock. And so we always have a checklist on entry on what needs to be done. Here comes the pigs. Best to start making sure the barn is clean, washed, dry, heated to about 28 degrees. Also making sure biosecurity is a priority and is followed. So yeah, making sure the barn's heated up, the temperature is controlled, you got your vents fixed, you got the fans working properly, the louvers fixed, there's no leaks through them, the drafts. Cleaning, so pressure washing for the room equipment, the fans, the louvers, turn the feeders upside down. You want to make sure you get all that water, the disinfectant out. If there's a lot of water and soap in the bottom of the feeders, when the piglets come in, that feed will be in the feeders, start going moldy. It will set the piglets back. Make sure the room's dry as well. So making sure you've got your summer maximum ventilation going, the wind going. Inspection too, going through, double checking everything, making sure it's clean. You can walk through, you can see if there's manure anywhere, moldy feed. Just make sure it's nice and clean for when the pigs come in. The ventilation, there's some checklists, the barn temperature, yes, making sure it's set, the moisture level, the humidity is to be between 65 and 70%. Making sure the room is heated, the balance, like all throughout, there's not hot spots, cold spots. Making sure your minimum fan speeds are readjusted, that you're moving enough air to get the odor and the gases out from the heater. Turning down the fans to keep that room warmer might save money in the propane, but it also will cost you in the long run. So there's temperature curves. You want to make sure you're following it, you're dropping it down. So bringing the pigs in at 28 degrees and slowly decreasing that over the period of times that they're in the farm. Watch where the piglets are sleeping. The piglets will tell you if they're hot, if they're cold, if they're piling up, it's probably too chilly in there, or they're getting drafts from the vents. If it's wet and sloppy, yes, that could be drafts too going on. So watching the pigs, they'll tell you about your temperature and everything. This is just example of the grow finisher room temperature chart. A lot of people like to run the fans back to back, but they don't use the full potential of each stage fans. So this chart here will kind of show you kind of the layout. This is only set to 21 degrees. Most rooms start off at 28, but this is just kind of how you want to program the fans, like different stages, stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1, you want it to go up about a degree and a half, and then let it run max 0.5 degrees until your stage 2 comes on. If you have stage 2 coming on too soon, you're going to chill that room down. The environment's not going to be right for the pigs. Then you could be running into the heating issues as well. So given each stage like a half degree to actually do its job before the next stages come on, you can save money that way and keep a better environment for the pigs. So entry, do you have SOPs for starting pigs off? The hard entry call protocol, are the right pigs being moved into your farm? Wean age should be within 1 week. Variation cause issues. So know what pigs you're coming, make sure you have the right phases and diets for them. And if you're having poor pigs coming in, if there's any health issues, cleaning it up, talk to the sow farms, making sure they know what you want, what you need into the farms. High quality water is a must. A lot of people overlook the water. Water is important. The more water the pigs drink, the better they eat. So disinfection of the water lines, you can do it monthly, yearly, but keeping up on that, checking your water nipples, making sure you have that proper flow for those piglets, adjusting the nipples if they're adjustable, making sure the smallest ones, the nipples are set to shoulder heights. For small guys, for pigs that aren't doing well, add an additional water sources, little red hoppers, just to help encourage them, get them onto the water, get them onto feed. Those small guys are what's going to make you that 1 to 2% difference at the end, is how you monitor those small guys and get them off in that first week. Drain the water lines from lines in the morning at entry. So making sure the water is nice and cool in those nipples, and those piglets, you can see that liquid dripping out. It's going through, running those water lines to make sure the piglets know where the access of the water is. Acidifying the water if your pH is too high. If the pH is too high, you can run into a lot more scours with the piglets. So monitoring the pH levels on that. If you see a lot of looseness in your piglets, talk to the vet, and they might have some recommendations about pH levels and different peroxide or acidify the water lines just to help out with that. Water and what to consider. Yes, like I mentioned earlier, the water intake not only drives the feed intake, but it's also important functions for their immune systems and temperature regulations. If they're dehydrated, they're going to overheat more. Their immune systems will be down. So making sure they have enough water access and they know where the water is. It's making sure it's fresh, cold. Yeah, so that's another sign. If you're noticing an issue with your piglets, they're not thriving, they're not eating as well, look into your water. What is your water? What's the pH? Can they drink it? Do they have access to it? Is their nipple clogged? Is the water flow rate too low? It's 10 to 12 pigs per nipple and 20 to 25 pigs per bowl. It's best to always have a little bit extra, not run your pens completely tight, because in the summertime, if the water lines are at the back of a pen, it's harder for them to get access to. Yeah, and another tip is considering trickling the water out of the nipples or into cups at entry to entice them to drink. So just loosening up the nipples a little bit so there's some water coming out. It helps mainly the little guys. The little guys are the ones that you want to help get to the door. Your big healthy guys, they'll catch on. So you want to try and save 1% of your small group pens. feed. Marsha's gonna come in and take over for a bit.
Okay, so feeding the pigs on Nursery is definitely where you can your feed efficiencies, saving feed, making sure you're on the correct phase. Obviously, number one phase is the most expensive of the nursery, so making sure that that feed budget is on par. We talk about stimulating feed appetite. So, you know, we have pictures of, you know, small, you know, the red feeders, you know, there's mat feeding just to entice them, because every let's say leave mom calls that dinner bell every hour. So they don't get that in the nursery. You know, this is the most stressful time of a pig's life. So getting them up multiple times a day, walking through those pens, making sure there's fresh water. If the water is too, like Steve was saying, if it's too acidic, they won't drink. So it's important, if you can, control your water intake, look at the water intake if you are able to. So you can look at if there is an issue coming on farm. You can look at if there's any issues with health. If there's waterclogged, you can then look at it and take a look. Also, we talk about the 5% smallest pigs in the nursery. Some people do sort, some people do not. My preference is collecting the bottom 5%. They're going to struggle at the feeder. So giving them some extra space. And I always like to give them a phase below. So I always keep them on the phase that they're on for a little bit extra time, just to get them geared up for leaving the nursery. Next. So best chance to market. I mean, it's very important to make sure that that nursery is clean. So you're getting that biofilm off. You know, we have scours, post-weaning E. coli's, making sure it's warm and dry. Pigs need that extra comfort coming in from weaning. They've just left their mom, they've left their brothers and sisters, and now they have new pen mates. So making it warm, comfortable, and dry for them. And another thing that gets left is the ventilation settings, ensuring that the ventilation is set. Steve talked about that a little bit prior to myself coming on. So making sure that the ventilation is set, making sure the humidity is below 65%, making sure there's fresh air coming in at all the time. Gruel and mat feeding is something that we're seeing more of going into nurseries. People really like the gruel feed, especially for that bottom, 5%, or when you're walking through that first week. It's important to see those pigs that are not eating, that they're not off to a good start. So having that gruel feeding or having mat feed that they know where they can get that feed the first week is important. The other thing, and I know it's pretty tough right now with leaving an extra 2 pens opened in the nurseries for a recovery pen and a pull pen, but we do see the benefit of those pigs getting pulled out in a timely manner, because once those pigs start to fall back, it's hard to identify and get them back to where they should be. So having them pulled out at a timely manner, giving them that extra space, and having that gruel or mat feed where they're not so pressured and bullied by their pen mates, and having that second pen for recovery for those extra pigs that just need that care. So this is the impact of birth weight. And when we talk about weaned pigs going into the nursery and it being a 7-day spread, I always use the analogy of having nursery pigs and the weight and the age. I always look at that as, if it's more than a week, you're looking at a toddler and a 10-year-old in the pen. So they grow so quick. So there's going to be different antibody levels. There's going to be different, the way they grow, how they carry themselves. So if you look at this graph, you're going to see anybody that is less than even one kg, you're looking at more, your chances of mortality is significantly increased. So on farm, it says here, 700 to 800 grams. Ideally, you don't want those pigs going into the nursery. They take longer to grow. They'll probably see a birthday in the finishing. And we've done a lot of trial work where we see those pigs just don't make it to market. So individual pig ear is one of the things that I drive home to when I'm walking through the nurseries and talking to the staff, is always having a marker so that you can mark those pigs that you see when you're walking through. Hey, maybe it's not eating, so I'm going to just mark it and watch it. Or this pig just doesn't look good today, so I'm just going to mark it. Having a couple different colors wouldn't be a bad idea either. Classifying animals by size. Again, we talked about pulling those 5% of the bottom 5%. Some do 10%, but again, really focusing on those bottom 5%. Spending the time walking through those pens. My rule of thumb is two seconds per pig per day. So whether that's a walk through in the morning, a walk through in the afternoon, but walking through and getting them up and identifying any of those sick will have your bottom cost significantly lower. Every nursery has a different approach to feeding. So some do gruel, some do mat, some have wet dry feeders, some just have, a trough. So again, it doesn't matter what you have in the nursery, as long as the pigs they can eat, they can drink, and you can see that they're growing and their daily intake is going up. With the injectables, right here we have Draxin, or that was Telavin. Any of those long-acting respiratory antibiotics is always good, just to give those piglets a little boost. They're probably struggling. They have new brothers and sisters or their neighbors, and they're just not used to them. So it's always good to have just a little boost. Frequencies, again, I was talking about 1 to 2 walkthroughs per day. And ideally for the first 5 days, it's imperative to be identifying all of those pigs. If you can get that through for the first 5 days, the pig has a better chance of surviving and getting through to market. Also, it helps them while you're walking through the pens. It gets them used to having some exposure to humans. And I'm sure you can all attest to, when you don't walk through those pens and they see you, they kind of go to the back. It helps with moving, transport. They're just easier to work with. So I touched a little bit about hospital pens. If you have the space, ideally you would like to isolate them, and having, even one pen per room would be ideal. If you had 2, that's best case scenario. But knowing that pig stocking and density is becoming a challenge due to not our control, but with the holdups on the slaughter plants, it does give a little bit of a challenge. Minimizing, 3 to 4 pigs per pen. It's important to have healthy pigs. So, and socializing is very encouraged. Again, this is going to be the time that they're seeing new pen mates. They have to be comfortable. I don't like to just put one pig in a pen. They do need to have a friend. They do better with groups. So I do encourage, if you are going to be pulling pigs, having more than one pig in the sick pen. The other thing that we've come across and is important is euthanizing in a timely manner. We don't want to see any pigs suffering. After 3 days of treatment and that pig is not improving, ideally making sure we take a look at the pig and making the best decision for it. It's not fair to the pig, and we do not we just struggle with it. It's just a hard topic, and a lot of people don't like to euthanize. They think that those pigs will get better, but after those time in needling and giving them their treatment, if they haven't improved, euthanasia is the best option. So again, what is the normal rate? 2 to 5% of individual treatment. So we will see 75% success on individual treatment. If you're getting up into 10, 15, 20% individual treatments, it's best to then talk to your vet if we need to do something else, whether we put meds in the feed or a water med, depending on the scenario and the issue. So my conclusions will be, weaning the first week is a stressful period for the piglet. It is the most stressful time. They're separated. They have a transport truck ride. They go from milk to solid food. And we want to make sure that it's, we make it an easy transition, and we're walking through those pens and identifying those pigs that do need an extra little bit of help. So with that, thank you. And I will give it back to Ryan.
All right, thank you to both Steve and Marcia, and I'll just remind everyone that those questions, we do see questions coming into the question box there, so we'll review those and we will handle those questions after the presentation. And then our last speaker, so I'm just going to introduce Jesse McCoy. So Jesse, he grew up in Virginia, so he is a water specialist. So he's the business unit specialist for water treatment at Neogen Corp, where he implements water treatments in the objective of setting up cost-effective water programs. So we're very excited to have him on this call, and this is our featured speaker, our sponsor, featured Jesse to speak to us today. So with that, Jesse, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. I noticed as I put the title screen up there, I'm sorry. I'm from the US. I'm terrible at conversions. It's 5.5 pounds, which is like 2 kilos. I will do my best as we go through this to convert as I can in my head, but I grew up in the American public school system. I don't make any promises. So what we're going to talk about today is first thing, why good water. Steve did a great job of explaining that earlier. So, hopefully I won't have to get too far into it, and I want to keep us on time. But I think it's important to remember that as you're moving piglets, that piglet's 82% water. And when you're hanging a pig on a shackle, it's 51% water. And then manure is 90.8. And why do these numbers matter? Because all the water that animal gets comes out of that drinker, right? I've got 3 drinks sitting in front of me on my desk right now. That's how I operate throughout the day. None of them is water because I have a choice. Those pigs don't. They get a small amount of respiration, but like Steve was saying, it's the largest input they have. They're going to drink at least twice as much by weight as feed they eat. So for every kilo that they're taking in with feed, they're drinking at least 2 kilos of water. And I lost a bet one day, so I have to say that it's a key nutritional and biosecurity component of production. But in reality, we're talking about over half of your end product being water. And as I go through things today, you'll see if I think something's important, I'm going to say it more than once. So again, over half your input or half of your end product is water. And what that means is over half of the money that you're getting paid because you're selling this product comes from water. So I like to say we're all in the water business. We just mix ours with some pigs before we send it out the door. So everybody then wants to know, what is good water, right? Well, it depends. What it really depends on is, what are you trying to do? What makes you the most money at your facility? Because that's what we're really trying to dig into, is where do you have things to gain and how do we get there with water? That said, everybody agrees that they're free of bacteria, that it's slightly acidic, like we talked about before. So that means a pH under 7. Few suspended and few dissolved solids. Why few? They cost money to take out. And so if we're going to spend that money, we got to get more than that money back. Few heavy metals, nitrates, sulfates. I'm not going to get really down into this today. But those are the things that we would have a conversation about, or you have a conversation with your veterinarian about what's going to make you money, and then how do you get there, and what levels do you set for your farm? Because we got to remember, they're pigs, they're not people, right? We have to have a return on investment. I was really happy to see an ROI number come up on some earlier presentations, because that's how I think about water, and I think it's how everybody should be thinking about water. So let's get into it. All right. We had 2,400 head sow farm. We took ISO weans out of that, a 20-year-old nursery, which is pretty typical in the United States. In Canada, right, you all have some new barns, you've got some old barns. So I think this definitely converts well. We had 4 study groups with essentially 200 pigs apiece. One of them was a control, and then we did 3 different treatment groups for a 6-week nursery term. So we had a control. We did just line cleaning. I was also really happy to hear Steve talk about doing line cleaning. We did line cleaning and disinfection. And then finally, we did line cleaning, disinfection, and pH control. You'll notice that I talk about chemistries and not brands in this, because I think it's important to focus on the chemistry. Were they Neogen products? Yes, we sponsored the trial, but I think it's going to drive home that water quality is important, and how you get there is as much about chemistry as it is brands. So what we see? No surprise, I'm doing this presentation to you. Of course, it did great, right? This was our average daily gain. You'll see the control was, significantly lower than the trial barns. Our feed efficiency, again, significant change between them, and our weekly weights. And here's where you get down to between the positive control at the end of week 6 and the full treatment. You have those large changes, 5.5 pounds, 2 kilos, right? What's that 2 kilos worth? We had a cost, because I'm sure somebody's going to ask about cost. We were 7 cents a pig on water treatment in the US. So that's probably around 10 cents a pig in Canadian. And then, you look, all right, we got 2 kilos. What's a kilo worth to me? Is it more than 10 cents? I think it's important to point out, though, that not only when you do the full system do you get these gains, but if you just do it piece by piece, you get them as well. And so I've got the reference here at the bottom with who we worked with, the vets at Fairmont Vet Clinic. But again, 21% change in gain by focusing on water. A 13% change in feed efficiency by focusing on water. And our weights at the end of that nursery, 5.5 pounds. So 2 kilos. And the only thing we changed was water. So I do think it's important to say, look, there's not a silver bullet for water treatment. I wish that there was. If there was, I would be doing this presentation instead of my office with a virtual background, because it's a glorified closet in Virginia. I'd be on a beach somewhere super nice where I didn't have to have a virtual background, and then I'd be telling you, because I would just say, hey, buy this machine. But because we're dealing with water, and we're dealing with different starting water qualities and potentially different ending water qualities, that what works at one farm doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in another. If your water quality is the same and you're both trying to get to the same endpoint, then yeah, you can do the same thing. But there's not a black box that hangs on the wall that fixes everything. I wish that there was, there's not. So I'm going to talk about the basics here real quick about what we can do. These aren't all the things that we can do, but this is what we focused on. And it's what really I think the swine market is focused on, because you can change them easily and inexpensively. And that's disinfection of the water, adjustment of pH of the water, solids control, and then waterline disinfection. Waterline disinfection is a fancy way of saying cleaning all the stuff in that water line out. Why do we care about doing residual disinfection? Because we want to reduce that animal to animal disease disinfection. I myself have a cup. This is my coffee mug. It's what I drink out of. It is only mine. No one else uses it. We talked about, earlier today, the amount of pigs you need to have per drinker. They're sharing that drinker, so they don't get to have a nice drink like I do from their cup. They're sharing it. So we want to do what we can to limit that animal to animal disease, wildlife to animal disease. If you're using a water source that's, a pond, a stream, a creek, a spring, any of those, we want to make sure we're not bringing anything from outside that barn, inside of that barn. Reducing labor. And how do you reduce labor? If you don't have to clean pads, if you don't have to clean drinkers, if you don't have that solid buildup, right? Those are all things that you no longer have to deal with. So that's why we want to do a disinfection with a residual disinfectant. And we're going to talk about chlorine dioxide because that's what we used in the trial, and it gives us that residual. So these are all the great things about it. It fundamentally kills everything that we're worried about. And it kills things that bleach does not. And I think it's important to bring that up. We see chlorine resistant E. coli's, we see chlorine resistant Clostridiums, starting to see chlorine resistant Salmonella, diseases that we didn't used to care about, that we do care about now. As we advance to, more novel techniques, we're dealing with novel diseases. And most of them that we deal with now are resistant to bleach. So I know that everybody is kind of either is using, or knows somebody that's used bleach. We really need to get our technology past that because bleach isn't doing the job anymore. Another thing to talk about is a taste and odor control claim. If you're trying to put more water into that pig, chlorine dioxide has a taste and odor control claim on the label. It will put more water into that pig. They will want to drink it. The issue though, it's not, $4 a gallon and you can't buy it at your local grocery store. Okay. This is something that you're going to find at your veterinarian's office, at your veterinary distribution business, something like that. It's not something you can buy off the shelf. You do create it on site. So how you put it in is as important as that you put it in, because we want to make sure that it's safe. And it's new technology. Most people haven't heard about chlorine dioxide. If they have, they've heard about it in another industry. And the solids are inconsistent. So what type of chlorine dioxide you use is also important, not just the chemistry. pH adjustment, the next step we did. Again, we're looking for acidic. Typically, I say 6.5 to 6.8. You can go lower than that, but I haven't seen the return on investment for a lower pH level like I have that 6.5 to 6.8 range. If it's above that, you add an acid. Okay. If it's below that, you can add a base to raise the pH, but frankly, I wouldn't, because you're going to get the performance benefits and not have to spend any money. Why? Pigs like acids. It tricks their brain into thinking that they're getting more calories. Okay. It's been shown to improve feed conversion, reducing disease, all the things that Steve talked about before, right? pH adjustment is a piece of water treatment that does more than just aid in killing biology. It changes the nutritional impact of the feed that's going into those pigs to help them better absorb those minerals. The other thing about pH, at a pH above 7, solids build up. At a pH between 7 and 5.5, solids stay soluble. And a pH below 5.5, that is the chemical definition of descaling. So if you've got some buildup in your lines and you're a finisher barn or you're a sow site, and you don't have the ability to go in and clean those lines really easily before the next turn goes out or something like that, you can get that pH down below 5.5. Pigs will drink it, and it will start to clean away the solids that you have built up on the inside of that water line. And this is my favorite slide that I've ever created. I show it in every presentation. This is the supply line for a 15,000 head sow site. And they couldn't figure out why all the pigs had scours. While you may think that that is an iron buildup, that's actually 2 inches of E. coli built up in a biofilm inside of a supply line. And this is what we were dealing with at that site. Do I think everybody has this issue? Not to this extent, certainly. But if you think you've got some buildup inside that water line, this is what it can turn into. So why do you want to clean lines? Removing those solids, we talked about volume reduction. You have to not only get water to that animal, but you have to get it there at the speed at which they can consume the most. Pigs drink for a certain amount of time, not until they've had all that they want, right? They're fighting over that drinker. Instinctually, they're drinking for a certain amount of time so that they don't get preyed upon by predators. It's something we can't break them from, so we have to get the volume to them. Pathogen loading, increasing efficacy of antimicrobials. If you ran a drug for E. coli in that water line I just showed you, does that drug care where it runs into the E. coli? And I'm going to stop with that line of questioning because I think it's important that we use antibiotics judiciously. And one of the ways to do that is to run it in a clean water line. But I think what I really want to drive home is the first drink those animals get when you move them into a barn. We've cleaned the whole barn. We've heated that barn up. We've got a water line that has food in it. If we were trying to grow bacteria, we would put it on a tray that had food on it. We'd put water on top of it. We would heat it up and we'd keep it dark. And that is exactly what the inside of a drinker line looks like before you put pigs in there, which means the first drink that pig gets is the worst drink it will get in its entire life unless you clean the water lines before they go in. So again, the first drink that pig gets when it has the least amount of immune function possible is the worst drink it will get in its entire life if we don't clean water lines. That's why I think it's so important to clean them either in between turns, or if you've got a sow site, we can clean them while pigs are there. It's a little bit more difficult to do, but it's possible. But I think if you're going to take one thing away, think back to that data that I showed you a few slides ago. Cleaning water lines alone has an impact on these pigs. It's inexpensive. It doesn't take much time. You can get it done. I'm going to skip through this to keep us on time, other than to say, if you have a little bit of buildup, 1/8 of an inch, so that's like 1 centimeter, you are reducing the volume of water going to those pigs by 30% by the time they get grown out. So what works for cleaning water lines? These 3 chemistries. And as a rule, 3% is the dilution. How do you get 3%? Sump pumps, mixing stations, and there are adjustable proportioners. How do you not get 3%? A medicator. If you're trying to clean lines with a medicator, you are not running enough chemistry to actually be effective at cleaning the water lines. And everybody says, well, I'm not going to clean my drinkers. If I was there in person and COVID didn't exist, I'd say, how many of y'all have cleaned your water lines? And some of you would raise your hand. And I'd say, how many of you would do it again? And nobody would leave their hand up because everybody says it's going to clog my drinkers. Well, clog them with what? If you are worried about clogging your drinkers, you have admitted to yourself that you have something inside that water line that we need to get out. And that's where we need to pick the right chemical. And peracetic acid, because it dissolves and disinfects, to me, is the right chemical for our industry. So if you wanted to start a sanitation program, how would you start? You take a sample and you get it analyzed, right? You create that baseline, know where we're starting, have a discussion about where you want to get. And then you would take 2 samples, one well or raw water sample, which is what everybody takes, and then one at the end of the line from a drinker. And if you're sitting there scratching your head going, man, I don't want to take that sample because I know it's going to be nasty, great. I don't care how ugly it is, right? I want to know what the pigs are drinking. Take it from a drinker. Compare those two samples to find out what's happening inside of your water line. And then we can, engineer a solution to your farm from that. And don't follow the traditional sampling methods that everybody else is going to tell you to do, right? Don't flame the tip. Don't run it till it's cold. The pigs aren't in there cleaning that drinker every time they take a drink. We want what the pigs are drinking. That will tell us what they're actually getting and help us make a better solution for you. And then test for the right minerals and pathogens. Why do I say that? Because I don't want you to test for lead and I don't want you to test for arsenic. If you find those, you have a responsibility to treat. Don't look for them, right? We can't do anything about that for those pigs in an economic way. Let's test for the things we can change and get an ROI on. And then do a program approach. This is a full-blown water sample or water treatment program. It's on 2 pages. One of them is what to do when pigs are there. One of them is what to do when the pigs are not there. From there, I see we have questions coming up. Ryan, I assume we'll kind of bounce those back and forth, but I appreciate your time. This is my contact info if you want to get a hold of me. Thank you all so much for having me, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Jesse, very much. That was very interesting. So we actually do have a lot of questions in the question box, so we appreciate all those questions. It is just about 5 minutes now, so I'll start with some quick ones here first, and then I do want to ask Jesse a couple questions so we can get those answered. So there was a few questions on the cost of the IRIS program that I presented. So that program is free for customers of Demeter, and if you're not a customer of Demeter, there is a price structure that we've laid out. But I just encourage you to talk to your vet about that. So, but as far as for Demeter customers, that is free of charge. It's part of the value added service that we want to bring to all of you. And then also there was a quick question about the hypodermic needleless vaccinator that I presented. So there was one question about how many doses per charge. So that device comes in a case and there's 2 batteries in there. Each battery will give you about 800 to 1,000 doses. And that unit is, what's so interesting about it is free when you use the vaccine. So there's no charge for that unit. They'll give you 2 units just in case you have a backup. So if anything ever happens with one, you're able to use the other. They're very water resistant and everything like that, other than the battery itself. And they also replace that whole unit after about 35,000 doses, just to make sure that as far as the dosing is correct and it's correctly injecting and everything. They just want to make sure that it continues to operate correctly. So I think it's a really big perk of that whole system, and it's really, really interesting. So again, any more questions, you can talk to one of the Demeter team. And then for Jesse, I'll bring you in here. So there's a few really good questions here, and we will get answers to these questions after if we don't get to them all.
Yeah, I'm typing them up right now as I see them.
Oh, he's working. I see that. So why don't I just pick this one here? So there was a question if there is a toxicity risk when you initially lower the pH in the water lines because of that biofilm shearing off, similar to what you said about that clogging the nipples, right?
So your toxicity is not related to pH or the acid. If you are dropping pH with a water disinfectant, no, because you're going to kill whatever you break off. If you're just dropping pH, it's going to depend on which acid you use. So organic acids disinfect at pHs below 4.5. So if you drop to 4.5 with a blended organic, nope, no problem. If you drop to 4.5 with a mineral acid like sulfuric, then you do have the potential to run extra biology to those pigs at a very large slug at a time. So yes and no. Again, so much of water comes back to what you run and how you run it. A lot of the answers are yes, but, or no, but. So the answer is no, but you need to use the right acid to get the pH where you want it to go.
Okay. And one more maybe, Jesse, if that's okay. So obviously, it differs for how much you need of a lot of these products on different farms. So what would be a proper level of chlorine dioxide?
For pigs, I typically say 2 to 5 parts per million at the last drinker. You want to be under 10 at the first. Anything over 1 part per million, you're going to disinfect with. I like that extra 1 to 4 parts, depending on what else we're going for. It gives us a little bit of a safety factor. We know they're going to drink more at 5 parts per million than they will at 1 to 2. So if we're trying to inspire consumption of water, inspire feed consumption, I want you on that higher end. Pigs like the taste of it more there. But if we're just trying to disinfect and we're not worried about trying to get more consumption, then that, 2 to 4 range, I'm fine with that.
Good. Thank you very much. So in the interest of everyone's time, I'll cut us off there, but we do have a Facebook page, so we'll try and answer a lot of these questions on there as well. And you can also make more discussion on that Facebook page as well. And just a reminder that this session was recorded, so that'll be posted to the Pig Channel website next week. Also, just, of course, thank you to all of our sponsors again, which we're listing there or showing the logos there. That's also on the website. We just want to thank you for all their support, as well as our featured sponsor for this presentation, which was Searvet Canada. The next webinar will be in English. It's presented by Shakespeare Mills and Ingredients in Ontario here. So that's held on October 22nd, and details and registration for that will come out on the Pig Channel websites. So again, thank you for attending. I want to just thank you all the speakers again, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.